My name is Noelle Armand, and I'm 28 years old. On the Tuesday, everything snapped. The Phoenix twilight looked like melted copper on our street. Inside my parents' house, the air tasted like lemon cleaner and old arguments. I could hear the dishwasher chuffing in the kitchen, the television murmuring a sports recap to an empty living room. In the dining room, Mom had set the table like a truce. Cloth napkins, candles we never lit, the good plates that knew too much. Garrett lounged at the head as if he'd paid for the chair. He hadn't paid for anything in years. Mom folded her hands, knuckles pale. Dad stared at the wood grain. I sat where I always sat, the seat that used to be mine, back when I still believed love was something you could earn by being organized and useful. Garrett cleared his throat, trying for casual and landing on careless. I need 120. He meant 1,000. He said it like a favor, like he was borrowing sugar from a neighbor. Gambling slipped, he added, lips tightening. Interest rates, people waiting. I looked at him and saw the summer he got the truck for his 16th, the fall he borrowed money from Grandma's purse, the winter my science fair certificate disappeared because his playoff game ran long. The years layered on his face like fingerprints at a crime scene. Mom didn't let me answer. Family takes care of family, Noelle. Dad finally looked up at me. Your little office job has you sitting on plenty. His voice was gentler than the words. That made it worse. I felt my pulse in the base of my throat. No. At first it was a whisper, then it grew its spine. No, that's my future. I won't sign a mortgage, and I won't hand over my savings. The room changed temperature. Mom's face hardened into a mask I recognized from every time I'd tried to be a person instead of a function. Your brother needs you. He needs consequences, I said, surprised to hear it out loud, and a plan that isn't me. Garrett's ears went red. You think you're better than us? I didn't. I thought I was tired. When I stood, my chair legs scraped the tile like a warning siren. I'm sorry you're in a mess, Garrett. I am. But I'm not your emergency fund. Dad's jaw worked. Mom's eyes glossed with the kind of tears that always came with a bill attached. If you walk out, she said, voice flat, don't come back. I walked out. The evening smelled like creosote and heat-sick roses. I sat in my car in the dark lot of a closed grocery store and watched my phone shiver with incoming messages. Mom's text arrived first, shapely and sharp. Sign the mortgage papers for Garrett, or consider yourself no longer part of this family. I reread it until the words lost edges. A streetlight buzzed. A moth pinned itself to the halo and kept trying. I opened my banking app on muscle memory and saw the number I'd built one careful dollar at a time. 12 years of brown bag lunches, secondhand furniture, certifications on nights when friends were out at happy hour. My hands were steady until an email banner slid over the top of the screen. Multiple failed login attempts on your account. 4 attempts, back-to-back timestamps. My stomach went cold in a city that never cools. I pulled my laptop from the back seat like a medic opening a kit. Changed passwords. Changed passwords again. Enabled every lock I could find. Spun up two-factor like a drawbridge, called the bank and froze all external transfers unless I stood there with my face and my ID. By the time the last lock clicked, it was just past midnight. Phoenix looked like a dim constellation in the rear view, more sky than city. My phone lay face down on the passenger seat, still buzzing every minute or two like a dying thing. I let it. I thought about the day Patricia at the strip mall bookstore showed me how to open a savings account and told me to pay myself first, about stock shelves and mint tea and the way small money becomes big money if you treat it like a promise, about how, in our house, I learned a different promise. If Garrett needed something, our lives rearranged until the need disappeared and the habit stayed. Headlights washed over the dash. A car turned in, then out. I exhaled like I'd been underwater. The quiet that followed felt like a room I hadn't been allowed to enter until now. A message banner rose and hovered, Daniel, and I stared at the name without tapping. Daniel Reyes, tall, steady, allergic to drama, had a way of making chaos sit down and use its inside voice. He'd texted me before dinner, call me after, no matter how late. He was a good man. He was also a mirror. Around him, I could see what I wanted. That made calling him both easy and impossible. The phone buzzed again. Another banner. This one from a name I didn't have saved, but knew anyway from years of overlap and parties where everyone pretended we were all fine. Leah, Daniel's ex, a bullet without a gun. I didn't open either message. I told myself it could wait until morning. The truth, I wanted 1 hour, just one, where my life belonged only to me. At 12:17 a.m., I called the bank again and spoke to a woman with a soft Midwestern voice who called me Harnaise. We layered on extra verification questions like sandbags, first pet, first car, the street with the wobbly stop sign where I learned to ride a bike. She told me I was smart to act fast. I didn't feel smart. I felt like a burglar who'd broken into her own house to change the locks. When I got home, the apartment smelled like laundry and basil from the plant I kept forgetting to water. I put my phone on the coffee table screen up this time, let it blink with missed calls. Dad, Mom, then Garrett, then unknown numbers that felt like cousins, and the kind of friends who only remember you exist when there's a fire. I made tea I wouldn't drink and stood by the window while the kettle cooled. Somewhere, a neighbor laughed. Somewhere, a train threw its voice across the city. In the reflection, I looked like a person making a decision. The next voicemail rolled in. Dad, voice rough. After everything we did for you, delete. Mom, tin and sugar. You're tearing this family apart. Delete. Garrett, pure gasoline. You're dead to me. Delete. I watched the red badges vanish. I didn't feel relief. I felt space. On the counter, a tiny vase of Trader Joe's tulips had tilted toward the sink. I righted them, smoothed a bruised petal, and saw my hands weren't shaking anymore. One message I did open. An email from work confirming my certification bonus had posted. The number was small compared to what they wanted from me tonight. It still felt like a door clicking open somewhere down the hall. I texted Daniel at last. I'm home. Not great. I'll call you in the morning. The dots appeared. I'm here whenever you're ready. A pause. Proud of you, no matter what they say. I set the phone face down again and laughed. One short sound in an empty room, because I'd almost written back, you don't even know what I did yet. But he did. The doing wasn't what mattered. The line I'd drawn did. At 1:06 a.m., I opened a new note and wrote 3 sentences. Change direct deposit to new high-yield savings. Remove old recovery email from all accounts. Tomorrow, call HR about any relocation options, just in case. I stared at the third line until the words went shy. Then I added a fourth. Stop apologizing for staying alive. By 2:00 a.m., my apartment was a fortress, my accounts were a moat, and the person in my skin felt an inch taller. I turned off the lights. The city went on without me, as it always had and always would. By morning, I knew there would be 21 messages, a family verdict without appeal. But I also knew something they didn't. The power they'd had over me depended on a story I no longer believed. I got in bed, the sheet cool against my calves, the tulips making a small green sound as they settled. I thought about Leah's unread message flickering like a distant storm, about Daniel's voice saying my name without asking me to be anything other than its owner, about the word no, and how it can be a door you close or a road you start walking. The kettle finally clicked itself off in the kitchen. I didn't move. Morning hit like a headline. My phone lit the ceiling with the pulsing blue of incoming apologies that weren't apologies. 21 messages, stacked like parking tickets under a wiper blade. I scrolled with the numbness of a nurse on her 10th double shift. Mom, we didn't raise you to be cruel. Dad, return our calls. This isn't over. Unknown numbers. Family helps family. Cold-hearted. You'll regret this. Garrett had sent nothing at all, which somehow felt louder. I set the phone down and made coffee I didn't want. The basil on the sill had given up in the night, leaves gone dark at the edges. The kitchen smelled like a decision cooling. I sipped, winced, and opened the one text that felt like a rope over rapids. Daniel, I'm at Copper Bird. Got your usual. Can bring it by, or you can come here. Your call. The cup in my hand suddenly weighed a pound. 5 minutes, I typed, then added, thank you. The world outside had that gray, preheat honesty Phoenix wears before the sun decides everyone will suffer equally. Copperbird was 3 blocks away. On the walk, I thought about the first time Daniel and I met, how he'd noticed I read library barcodes like other people read palms, how he didn't try to fix my silence but sat next to it like a friend. He was at the corner table, 2 coffees between his hands. When he stood, the chair legs sang on tile. You okay? He asked. Not What happened? Not explain yourself. Just the present tense, like a blanket. I did the right thing, I said. It surprised me to hear it out loud. It just hurts like the wrong thing. He nodded. That's sometimes how right things feel. We sat. The coffee tasted like a truce I could keep. He slid a small brown bag across the table, a cinnamon roll, obscene and perfect. If you can't eat it, I'll pretend I brought it for me, he said. But you'll break my heart. I pulled off a corner and felt it dissolve on my tongue. They tried to get into my accounts, I said. At least someone did. Hell, he breathed, jaw tightening. I'm glad you locked it down. I did everything I could. I hesitated, then added, Leah texted me. A beat. What did she say? I didn't open it. Honesty like a bandage pulled quick. Yet. He watched my face, not my phone. She saw Garrett's post, he said carefully. It's making rounds in the old circle. She messaged my mom last night. I shut it down. But I'm sorry you're in the blast radius. There it was, the quiet complication with lovely hair and bad timing. Leah and I had never been friends. We'd been polite on principle and wary on instinct. She had a talent for finding the soft seam in any room and pressing. You don't owe me an apology for other people, I said. I know. Daniel smiled, a tired, tilted thing. I just hate that the people who shout the loudest are always the least invested in the truth. We let the silence be kind for a minute. He reached across the table, palm up. I set my hand in his. His thumb traced the web between my fingers like he was smoothing a map. Text me if the ground moves, he said. I'll come stand on it with you. When I got back to my apartment, the notifications had multiplied like rabbits. I opened Instagram and immediately wished I hadn't. Garrett's post stuck to the top of my feed like chewed gum, a pouty paragraph about abandonment, about how some people would rather watch their family drown than get their hair wet. A screenshot of a bank app, not his, with the name conveniently cropped. Cousins and second cousins populated the comments like weeds, awarding themselves medals for moral clarity. I locked my screen and put the phone in the freezer. Literally. The cold hum steadied me. I let it sit there between the peas and the stubborn ice tray as if frost could cauterize a wound. My laptop chimed. An email from Brianna, my mom's sister's daughter, the one who'd always sent me a text when family events became a sport, sat in my inbox with a subject line that looked like a sigh. Call me if you can. I did, she answered on the first ring. Noelle? Yeah. You okay? Define okay. She exhaled. I'm sorry. I saw the post, and I wasn't going to say anything, but after last night, I can't let you think this is new or your fault. A rustle of movement, like she'd gone somewhere private to be brave. He drained Grandma Rose 2 years ago, $30,000. She told everyone she fell for a phishing scam because she was embarrassed. Then last year, Uncle Paul loaned him $15,000. Never saw a cent back. Your parents covered most of the fallout. They always cover his fallout. The room tipped. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because you're the one person who might have said no and meant it, Brianna said gently. And saying no in your family is an unforgivable sin. I pressed my palm to the cool countertop. Thank you, I said, meaning it with my bones. You don't owe them your life, she said. You never did. Don't let a chorus of people who want your boundaries to be their ATM change that. After we hung up, I retrieved my phone from the freezer, wiped off the condensation like it had cried for me, and turned it on. A knock sounded at my door, a firm, practiced pattern. Authority, not inquiry. I looked through the peephole and felt my heartbeat relocate to my throat. My parents. Dad stood too straight. Mom clutched a manila folder fat with pre-printed assumptions. The word mortgage blinked in my brain like a hazard light. I opened the door just enough to make the next part a choice. We need to talk, Dad said without greeting, and stepped forward. If I hadn't planted my feet, he would have shouldered past me like we were still in that house where every hallway bent toward Garrett. No, I said quietly. We'll talk here. Mom's smile was the one she saved for customer service counters and neighbors she wanted to out-nice. Honey, she began, already pushing the folder at me. We brought the papers to make it easy. You just sign here and here, and the bank will... No, I said again. It tasted cleaner this time. I'm not signing anything. Dad's face went from pink to brick. You're out of line. I'm out of reach, I corrected. There's a difference. Mom's voice thinned. Your brother is in danger. He is, I said. And if you want him alive, stop handing him the matches and asking me to pay for the kerosene. They looked at each other, then at me, as if the shape of my refusal might warp if they stared hard enough. the silence between us filled with the clink of the ice maker and the far-off bark of a dog who didn't know anything about mortgages. Dad put both palms on the folder like he could press me into compliance. "Sign," he said, the syllable a stone. A knock from my phone. A calendar reminder I'd set at 1:06 a.m. Call bank to confirm holds. Another. Update direct deposit. On the screen, Daniel's name hovered with a new message. "Do you want me there? Say the word." I didn't move to answer. I looked at my father's hands and felt 12 again, then 15, then 22, then this minute where my life threaded itself back into my own pocket. "No," I said for the third time. "I won't sign. I won't co-sign. I won't apply. I won't just hold it for him. I won't be the bridge you burn and expect to walk across tomorrow." Mom's eyes glossed instantly. "How can you be so—" "Alive?" I asked. "Finally?" Dad straightened, drawing himself up into the full height of his disappointment. "You're out of this family if you walk away." I almost laughed. We were in my kitchen. "I didn't walk away," I said. "You put the door on wheels and rolled it behind Garrett years ago." He flinched, a small, honest movement. Then the old script snapped back. "We'll remember this," he said, "when you need us." "I won't," I said, and stepped back so they could see the exit as a kindness. For a moment, no one moved. Mom's gaze slid to my counter, where the cinnamon roll sat like a small, defiant sun. She opened her mouth, closed it, then gathered the folder to her chest, as if the papers might comfort her. At the threshold, Dad turned. "If something happens to him," he said, "that's on you." The lie hung in the air and blinked like a faulty fluorescent. I didn't take it. When the door shut and the hallway swallowed their footsteps, my legs turned to water. I had to remember how to walk on. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and counted to 10 in a language that sounded like breathing. The phone buzzed again. A new notification rose above Daniel's unread message. Leah, this time, finally revealing herself. "Saw the post. People are talking. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with money, you'd still have a family. Just saying." I stared at the words until they separated into letters, and the letters into shapes, and the shapes into static. Then I typed back, to Daniel, not to the ghost in the mirror. "All good. They came with papers." I said no. Shaking a little. "Can you call me in 10? His reply arrived before I could lock the screen. "Calling now." I let the ring go once, twice, then answered. When I heard his voice, the static lowered its shoulders. Outside, the day was already bright and mean. Inside, I felt the floor under my feet. A story I'd been told my whole life hissed and went out. What remained wasn't peace, not yet, but it was pressure that belonged to me. And pressure can become a diamond if it doesn't crush you first. The quiet after my parents left didn't feel like relief. It felt like fallout. The air in my apartment had weight, the kind that settles after a storm when the lightning's gone, but the smell of ozone still clings. I stood there for a long time, staring at the manila folder they'd left behind on the counter. Their desperation had fingerprints. The pen Mom had used to make it easy rolled toward me, stopped at the edge, and balanced like a dare. I dropped it in the trash. Then I made tea. Then I threw it out too. The taste of guilt was stronger than any chamomile could fix. When Daniel called back, I didn't say hello. I just said, "They really came here." "I figured," he said quietly. "You okay?" "I don't think okay applies to this universe anymore." He exhaled. "Want company?" I wanted him more than I wanted company, but I wasn't ready to need anyone tonight. "Maybe tomorrow," I said. "Tomorrow then," he said, not pushing. "Proud of you." That sentence had started to sound like my own pulse. After we hung up, I turned my phone to silent and opened my laptop instead. The screen's glow made the room look colder, clinical. I needed numbers, something predictable, something I could balance. That's when the email came. Subject: Opening, Senior Financial Consultant, Summit Advisory Group, Denver, CO. Sender: Isaac Delgado. Isaac had been my classmate at ASU. Back then, he'd been the kind of guy who turned stress into strategy sessions over cold pizza. His message was casual, almost reckless, in how perfectly timed it was. "Hey stranger, we're hiring senior consultants in Denver, $95K starting salary, plus relocation bonus. Thought of you immediately. Apply if you're ready for a change of scenery. You'd fit right in." I read it twice, then a third time, slower. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. Denver, mountains, distance, air that didn't carry my family's voice. The decision didn't happen all at once. It formed like condensation on glass, quiet and inevitable. That night I filled out the application. Name, Noel Armand. Address, my Phoenix apartment. For now. Availability, immediate. References, Patricia, bookstore. Carol, current supervisor. Daniel Reyes. Personal reference, listed only with his initials. When I hit submit, the screen refreshed and gave me a small green check mark that looked like Hope wearing a suit. Outside, the streetlights hummed. Inside, I started a list titled If I Go. Give notice at Desert Financial Group. List furniture for sale. Cancel lease. Call movers. Tell Daniel. I left the fifth one blank for now. By morning, Phoenix was all glare and dust, and my phone buzzed like it owed me something. A voicemail from Mom I hadn't deleted yet replayed in my head. You're tearing this family apart. So I played something new instead, a podcast about resilience. A voice reminding me that boundaries and abandonment can look similar to people who benefit from your exhaustion. At noon, I got a text from Brianna. You okay after they showed up? I typed. They left, still breathing. Then she sent another. Good. I forgot to mention something. Grandma Rose wanted you to have her old wedding ring. Mom said she'd give it to Garrett. Just make sure it doesn't end up in a pawn shop. My throat tightened. Thanks for telling me, I replied. I'll keep that in mind. She sent one more message. I'm proud of you. None of us ever said no before. That afternoon, I drove to the office like it was any other Tuesday. Desert Financial Group's building was glass and gold tint, reflecting a version of me that looked composed. Inside, the air smelled like recycled ambition. Carol, my manager, waved me in. Morning, Noel. You look different. Everything okay? Just realizing some things, I said. She smiled faintly. That can be dangerous. Or necessary. She raised an eyebrow. You sound like you're about to do something interesting. Maybe I am. When I sat at my desk, my fingers hovered over spreadsheets that used to calm me. Numbers that used to make sense now felt like static. My inbox had become a symphony of family chaos. Cousins forwarding Garrett's post, coworkers sending polite, "Are you all right?" Messages that smelled like gossip. I clicked delete all. At 3:14 p.m., my phone buzzed with a Denver area code. Hi, is this Noel Armand? Yes. This is Rachel from Summit Advisory Group. We'd love to schedule an interview for later this week. Are you available for a video call? My throat went dry. Yes, absolutely. Friday morning? Perfect. Great, we'll send details. Welcome to the next step. When I hung up, my hands trembled, not from fear, more like the first vibration of freedom under glass. That evening, Daniel stopped by unannounced, holding takeout and an expression halfway between concern and relief. Didn't want you to eat cereal for dinner again, he said, stepping in after I nodded. The smell of sesame noodles filled the apartment. The silence after filled everything else. He sat across from me, elbows on knees. So, how bad was it? They came with papers, I said, pre-filled, like I was just supposed to sign and stop asking questions. He winced. They don't know when to quit. I said no, I whispered. He looked at me like I'd said I survived a war. That must have hurt. More than I thought it would. He leaned closer. And you still didn't sign. I shook my head. That's strength, Noel. That's not coldness. I looked down at my food. Then why does it feel like loss? Because you're grieving a version of family that never really existed? I stared at him. Did Leah teach you to talk like that? He smiled faintly. Therapy did. Leah never stayed long enough to learn anything uncomfortable. For the first time that night, I laughed. A short, startled sound. Good, I said, because I can't take advice from anyone who uses emotional manipulation as a love language. Daniel's grin softened. Then we're safe. We ate in silence, but it wasn't empty. When he left, he kissed my forehead and said, "Call me after your interview. I'll be waiting to celebrate." I watched him leave through the peephole, his back straight, the takeout bag swinging from his hand like punctuation to a sentence that hadn't ended yet. The next morning, I woke to an email from my bank. Suspicious activity alert. Attempted access denied. 3:47 a.m. 3 more attempts. Same IP address as before. I didn't need a degree in accounting to know what that meant. Garrett, or someone helping him, was still trying. I called the bank immediately, gave them my verification details, and requested a flag on all accounts. No external activity, I said. Freeze anything that looks like me, but isn't me. When I hung up, I sat in the dark, the city still asleep, and realized the depth of what I'd escaped. My parents hadn't just chosen Garrett. They'd trained him. I opened my laptop and checked the tracking on my Denver application. Status, under review. One line of text, the only line that mattered. That night, I sent Daniel a message. Interview confirmed for Friday. Wish me luck. His reply came instantly. Always. And hey, when you get that job, first round's on me. When, not if. For the first time in weeks, I slept without the noise of obligation in my head. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I dreamed of mountains. Snow quiet, clean air, a skyline that didn't know my name yet. And in the dream, no one asked me to sign anything. The video interview lasted 47 minutes. By minute 10, I already knew I wanted the job. By minute 20, I could tell they wanted me too. Rachel from HR smiled when she said it. Your analytical background and certifications are impressive. Summit values independence and initiative, and you seem to have both. Independence, initiative, words that had once been insults in my parents' mouths. Now they sounded like wings. When the call ended, I sat staring at my reflection in the black laptop screen. My face looked both familiar and foreign, like I was seeing the adult version of a child who'd finally stopped asking for permission. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Garrett. I didn't even tell most of my coworkers. But I told Daniel. When he picked up, his voice was the calm center of a hurricane. How'd it go? I think I got it, I said. And I didn't mean the job. I meant the life. He laughed softly. Then I'm buying champagne. Not yet, I said. They still have to confirm. Okay, he said. Then I'll keep it cold. The confirmation came 3 days later, a Thursday morning email with the subject line that felt like a door unlocking. Offer, Senior Financial Consultant, Summit Advisory Group. I opened it with trembling hands. $95,000 starting salary, $8,000 relocation bonus, 3 weeks to relocate. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My throat burned. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath for years. The next week moved in frames. Giving notice to Carol, who hugged me tighter than I expected. Listing my furniture on Facebook Marketplace. Turning off my lease autopay. Packing the tulip vase and basil pot like fragile proof that I could grow things. The last night in Phoenix, Daniel came over with pizza and 2 bottles of beer. We ate on the floor among boxes. The glow from the city outside turned his face gold. I can drive with you, he offered, tracing a finger along the cardboard edge of a box labeled Kitchen. Keep. I need to do this alone, I said. He nodded. No argument. Just text me when you hit Denver. I don't care what time. I will. Before he left, he kissed me goodnight. Slow, quiet, like punctuation that didn't need a next sentence. Denver smelled like snow and distance. The city's skyline looked sharper than Phoenix's mirages. Mountains framed everything like parentheses around a new life. My apartment sat on the edge of Capitol Hill. Hardwood floors, big windows, one stubborn radiator that clanked like it had opinions. I walked in, dropped my keys on the counter, and stood there until the echo stopped. I was alone, and I was free. The first day at Summit Advisory Group felt like stepping into another version of adulthood. Glass walls, espresso machines, employees who said, "Good morning," like they meant it. My team handled financial planning for mid-sized businesses, the kind that lived and died by balance sheets. Isaac met me in the lobby with that same easy grin from college. Still allergic to inefficiency? More than ever. He laughed. You're going to fit in perfectly. He introduced me to Carol's counterpart in Denver, a sharp, composed woman named Marianne Torres, who greeted me with a firm handshake and an even firmer compliment. I read your file, she said. You don't waste time. No reason to, I replied. She smiled. Good answer. By week 2, I was already running my own accounts. By week 3, Marianne pulled me aside after a client meeting. You're exceeding expectations. Keep this up, and we'll talk partnership track in a few years. Partnership. The word landed like sunlight after rain. That night, I stood on my balcony, watching the city lights scatter like coins, and thought about everything Phoenix had cost me. The loss didn't sting. It just existed, like a healed scar that still remembered the blade. When I started seeing Dr. Helen Reeves, the therapist Isaac had recommended, I told her everything in a single breathless monologue. My family's manipulation, Garrett's debts, the hacking attempts, the way saying no had felt like both sin and salvation. She listened without interruption, her pen hovering but rarely moving. When I finally stopped talking, she said softly, You were parentified, Noelle. Made to feel responsible for the emotional and financial stability of everyone else. That's not your fault. I know, I said, but my voice cracked on the lie. Knowing and believing are different, she replied. Let's work on bridging that gap. For months, we met every Thursday evening after work. Her office smelled of cedar and coffee, her windows lined with plants that leaned toward the light like they trusted it. She gave me phrases to practice. That's not my responsibility. No is a complete sentence. Choosing myself isn't selfish. It felt mechanical at first, rehearsed. Then, slowly, it began to feel like language I could live inside. Daniel visited in mid-April. He brought a small cactus and a bigger smile. I figured this one can handle you forgetting to water it, he teased. Cruel but fair. We spent the weekend exploring the city. Bookstores, street markets, a jazz bar tucked into a basement where the saxophone sounded like memory. On Sunday morning, while I made coffee, he said, "You seem lighter." Do I? He nodded. You laugh differently now, like it doesn't cost you. I set the mug in front of him. It still costs me. It just costs less. He grinned. That's inflation I can live with. Later, when he left for the airport, he hugged me long enough for silence to become language. I'm proud of you, he whispered again. I'm starting to be proud of me too, I said. Weeks passed. Work thrived. Denver became home. Then, one night, just as spring softened into June, I got an unexpected text from Brianna. Thought you should know. Your parents lost the house. Couldn't make mortgage payments after taking out that second loan for Garrett. They're moving into a rental. I stared at the message, waiting for guilt to arrive. It didn't. Instead, sadness came, quiet, respectful, like a guest who knew when to leave. I texted back, thanks for letting me know. Then I called Dr. Reeves the next morning. I feel strange, I said. Sad, but not responsible. Detached, but not cruel. She smiled gently. That's healing, Noelle. It doesn't erase compassion. It just removes self-sacrifice from the equation. That evening, I went to my balcony again. The Rockies blushed pink under the sunset. The air was thin and bright, the kind that forced you to breathe deeper just to stay grounded. I thought of the girl who'd once sat in her car outside a closed grocery store, clutching a phone full of threats, and I wanted to tell her something. This is what freedom sounds like. The absence of noise, the hum of a city that doesn't know your sins, and the steady beat of a life that finally belongs to you. Summer in Denver arrived like forgiveness, slow, patient, and brighter than expected. The city was alive with farmers markets and music festivals, the air sweet with roasted corn and sunscreen. At Summit, I was finally the version of myself I'd been working toward for 12 years, calm, competent, financially stable. My savings had crossed $190,000, and for the first time, that number didn't represent escape. It represented choice. I'd started volunteering at a community center on Thursdays, teaching free budgeting classes for young adults. We met in a classroom that smelled of whiteboard markers and hope. I'd scrawl words like compound interest and emergency fund across the board, watching the students' eyes light up when the math started making sense. One student, a 17-year-old named Sophie, reminded me painfully of myself. Quiet, meticulous, questions scribbled in a tiny spiral notebook. One evening after class, she lingered behind while the others filed out. I want to save for college, she said shyly, but my parents think that's unrealistic. I smiled. So did mine. Let's make them wrong. She laughed, surprised. I gave her a used copy of The Richest Man in Babylon and said, start here and open a savings account tomorrow, even if you only put in $10. The amount doesn't matter. The habit does. That night, as I walked home under the violet sky, I realized something unexpected. I was teaching the lesson I'd never been taught. The loop was closing. A week later, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in months. Brianna. Garrett's in the hospital. Overdose. They found him unconscious in his apartment. He's alive, but it was close. I stopped walking. The street tilted. He's in a treatment program now, her next message read. Psychiatric care, gambling addiction therapy. Mom and Dad are trying to get him into long-term rehab. My chest tightened. Whatever anger had been calcified inside me softened instantly into something heavier. Grief, fear, maybe both. I sank onto a park bench and typed back, "Thank you for telling me." Then I sat there, watching the light fade between buildings. The city went gold, then gray. In my next therapy session, I told Dr. Reeves everything. How do you feel about it? She asked gently. Sad, I said, but not guilty. I didn't cause this. She nodded slowly. And giving him money wouldn't have fixed it. No, I said, the truth landing cleanly for the first time. It would have delayed it. That's growth, Noelle. She smiled. You can care without carrying. I left her office lighter, though the world outside still felt tender. That evening, Daniel called. Brianna told me about Garrett. How are you holding up? I'm okay, I said. I'm not collapsing. That's good, he said softly. You've already done your part. The rest is theirs." His voice was a quiet tether across the miles. We talked about work, about Sophie's progress, about how he might transfer to Denver by next spring. The thought of that, a shared skyline, a new chapter, felt like something I could believe in without flinching. 2 days later, I got another message, this time from Mom. "I'm not asking you to forgive us or help financially. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. We were wrong to put that pressure on you. We were wrong about a lot of things. I hope you're doing well. Love, Mom." I read it 5 times, searching for the manipulation that had always hidden beneath her kindness. But it wasn't there. Just exhaustion, honesty, maybe even humility. I didn't reply right away. I closed the message and went for a walk, letting Denver's evening light wash the edges of memory. Parents were still parents, even when they broke you. And sometimes they learned too late what they'd done. The next morning, I texted back, "Thank you for saying that. I'm doing well. I hope you and Dad are finding your way through this." It wasn't reconciliation, but it was peace. A door left slightly open, not for them to enter, but for me to breathe through. By September, Garrett was stable, still in treatment, still rebuilding. Brianna updated me occasionally, always with cautious optimism. "He's taking responsibility," she wrote once. "Maybe this time it'll stick." I didn't know if it would, but I hoped it would. My life in Denver kept moving. Work flourished. Marianne gave me 2 major clients to manage alone. Sophie opened her first savings account, beaming when she showed me the screenshot of her first $100 deposit. "Look," she said proudly, "proof I can change my own life." I smiled. That's more than most adults ever learn. That night, standing on my balcony, I thought of Garrett, of my parents' foreclosure, of everything Phoenix had taken, and everything it had taught me in the taking. Dr. Reeves was right. You can love people and still leave. You can forgive and still refuse to return. And sometimes walking away is the kindest thing you can do, for them and for yourself. The next weekend, Daniel flew in for another visit. I met him at the airport, and when I saw him walking toward me, something in my chest settled. He looked tired from the flight, but smiled like it didn't matter. "Hey, Denver girl," he said. "Hey, Phoenix boy." He kissed me right there by baggage claim, the kind of kiss that didn't promise forever but hinted at possibility. Over dinner that night, he said, "Your mom's message. It sounded sincere." "It did," I said, "but I'm not going back." He nodded. "You don't have to. Forgiveness doesn't always require a return address." I reached for his hand. "You're getting good at this." He grinned. "Therapy helps?" We laughed, and for once the sound didn't echo with old hurt. Later, as we walked home through the cool Denver night, I caught a glimpse of the mountains. Silent, dark, unmoving. A horizon that didn't demand anything from me. And I thought, this is what rebuilding looks like. Quiet, slow, earned. Autumn in Denver came, dressed in amber light and clean wind. The trees along 13th Avenue turned copper. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke, and every morning the mountains looked closer, as if they were inching toward me in slow approval. At Summit Advisory Group, my promotion became official. Senior financial consultant. A new office, a raise, and 2 associates who now looked to me for guidance. I celebrated by buying myself a new desk plant, a hardy fern that refused to die even when I forgot to water it. I named it Persistence. When I told Daniel, he whistled through the phone. "Partnership track by next year?" Marianne hinted at it. "That's my girl," he said, pride softening his voice. "So, are we celebrating this promotion in person or through a screen again?" "Next weekend," I promised. "Fly out Friday. I'll cook." "You cooking is the real promotion," he teased. I smiled. "Just don't tell anyone how many takeout containers are in my freezer." Thursday evenings remained sacred. My volunteer classes at Mile High Financial Literacy. Sophie, my favorite student, had now opened 2 accounts, a savings account and a Roth IRA. She kept meticulous notes, color-coded tabs for expenses, goals, and dreams. One night after class, she stayed behind again. "I got into college," she said breathlessly. "Partial scholarship." I laughed, hugging her tight. "You did it." She shook her head. "We did it." When I got home that evening, I sat by the window and reread the old message from Mom, the apology. For months, I hadn't deleted it. It was proof that people could change, even if it came too late. I thought of calling her once or twice, but every time something in me whispered, "You can wish them well without inviting them back in." Daniel arrived Friday night, suitcase in hand, and a grin that still undid me. We made dinner together, pasta, salad, cheap wine, and ate it on the balcony as the city glittered below. I could get used to this, he said, looking out at the skyline. I already have. Maybe I'll transfer to the Denver office next year, he said casually, but his eyes searched mine. That's a long-term hint, I teased. He laughed. Maybe. Later, while we did the dishes, he said, You know, you don't talk about Phoenix as much anymore. I guess it's not my story anymore, I said, just my origin. He nodded, understanding without pressing. 2 weeks later, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox with my mother's handwriting on the front. My first instinct was to freeze, but curiosity won. Inside was a photo. Garrett, standing outside a rehab center, thinner, pale, but smiling. Beside him, Mom and Dad, older, humbled, a note beneath it. He's 6 months clean. We're trying to rebuild. No expectations, just wanted you to know. Love, Mom. I traced the photo's edge, feeling the quiet ache of recognition. Then I tucked it into a drawer, not hidden, not displayed, just kept. When I told Dr. Reeves about it in our next session, she smiled. That's closure without erasure, she said. You're allowing the past to exist without letting it rule the present. I guess so, I said softly. I don't hate them anymore. Good, that means the lesson stuck. By winter, my savings had crossed $205,000. It no longer felt like armor, it felt like freedom. Proof that the years of saying no had built something stronger than approval. I still taught my Thursday class. Sophie sent me a photo from her college dorm, her first budget spreadsheet taped to the wall above her desk, color-coded and perfect. Thank you for showing me what possible looks like, her message read. I replied, You did the work, I just turned on the light. One evening, Daniel and I walked through Civic Center Park, the city sparkling with Christmas lights. Snow fell in soft, almost apologetic flakes. Can I ask you something? He said, hands tucked in his coat pockets. Sure. Do you ever miss them, your family? I thought for a long time. I miss the idea of them, I said finally. The version I hoped existed, but not the reality. He nodded. That makes sense. I used to think love meant rescuing, I added. Now I think it means respecting boundaries. Daniel squeezed my hand. Then you've learned more about love than most people ever do. We walked on in silence, our breath visible in the cold. Denver's lights reflected in puddles like small universes we hadn't yet stepped into. That night, from my balcony, I looked out at the city, the snow still falling, the skyline glowing, and thought about the girl who once sat in her car outside a grocery store, reading her mother's text that said, Sign the mortgage or don't come home. She had thought she'd lost everything that night, but she hadn't. She had just begun to build it. Now, years later, she stood on a balcony in a city that didn't know her history, surrounded by the sound of her own quiet happiness. And she understood that freedom isn't loud. It doesn't look like revenge or vindication. It looks like peace. It sounds like breathing. It feels like choosing yourself over and over until the guilt fades and the life you've built starts to applaud you back. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Finish my budget spreadsheet for next semester. Want to check it? I smiled, typing back. Send it over. Let's make it perfect. Then I set my phone down, exhaled, and whispered to no one in particular. I made it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't mean out. I meant home.